everybody. Welcome to Secret Women Stuff by the Church at Sunside. I am Cathy Duffy, and I have Katie Cannon here with me. We are super excited to start this podcast, which we've been trying to do for a while. And we're actually here. This podcast, we are going to talk about marriage, parenting, relationships, all encompassing joys and struggles of life as a woman. Today, we're going to be talking about marriage and some different components of that. Hello, Katie.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
Good.
Glad to have you here. I know this is a long time coming, but we're finally doing it. Zoom style.
Yes. And we may be awkward, but we got it.
Yeah, it'll get better, guys. First ones. As I told them earlier today, the first secret of the Secret Women Stuff was I was in tears this morning practicing this because this is just outside my bubble. But, we stretch ourselves. So we are here. So let's just talk a little bit about ourselves today. Like I said, my name is Cathy, and I am married to Ken Duffy, who does the blacktop pulpit with Katie's husband, Andrew. We've been married for 17 years, and it's been an interesting ride, but I wouldn't change anything. So we've got 5 kids, and we live down here in Douglas. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. All right. I'm Katie Cannon. My husband is on the blacktop pulpit, Andrew. We have been married. It'll be 9 years this year. And we have 1 little boy, and we live in Sunsides, Arizona. So
hence the Zoom.
Yes.
But hopefully we can do some in-person stuff.
Yeah.
So today we wanted to just talk about biblical marriage, right? Marriage in general, what it looks like, what it should look like, kind of what we thought it was going to look like 17 years ago. So I think that's where I wanted to kick it off is if we rewind 17 years, what did I think marriage like? Oh, I'm engaged, I got a ring on my finger, like why I wanted to get married. And I could tell you it wasn't for the reasons that they are today, or wouldn't be. So it would be, I get to live with Ken, I get to move in with him, get to move out of my house, I get to have a big party, a big wedding, and the whole family aspect of it, baby showers and wedding showers and stuff. So it was not a very there was no like really biblical thought behind why I wanted to get married or anything like that. So I don't know if that's the same for you or.
Oh yeah. And definitely you've got that fairy tale mentality. You've got all of the rom-coms and everything. And you're like, oh, he's always going to be like this super romantic. He's going to bring me flowers every day. And
yeah. Not so much.
No.
Right? I mean, great parts. We're not going to start this podcast off talking about how horrible it is, but no. It's definitely, well, yeah, when you're in your dating years or your courtship years, there's a lot of butterflies and, newness to it. So, but like everything, the newness does wear off. Yeah. So,
but that doesn't mean it's not still good.
Oh, it's great. And that's why I'm saying like, the thought of what I wanted marriage to be like was I thought so much greater than what it would be. But now as you like mature in your marriage and you realign your expectations and you understand more why you're doing, why you should behave this way or why you should behave this way or why he's behaving that way, or you just kind of fall in line with what biblical marriage is. It is better than what you thought it was going to be. It's just different. It's different, but it's definitely better. I feel almost closer, to Ken doing marriage the right way at times because it's never done right all the time. But when it is done right, man, it's like, it's a different kind of feeling, a closer feeling, a right feeling where it's not so choppy and forced. But
the hard things that come, they aren't fun at the time, but I think they do honestly make you stronger together when you come out the other side of it, and you feel you get closer the longer you're together, or you should.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, naturally, the longer you are together, the more ups and downs you go through. So with that same person, which will obviously bring you closer together.
Yeah.
That way. So as far as biblical marriage, if somebody were to ask me, well, what do you think biblical marriage is now? I would say, after studying it and reading a lot about it, is it's a relationship between two people that mimic what Christ is to the church, and that relationship like is what Christ should be to us and how we respond to him as a church. So he's kind of given us marriage to kind of display the gospel to the world, to our children. I don't know if that's how you would describe it. If you could.
Yeah. It's this covenant relationship, this beautiful covenant relationship between husband and wife that, like you said, mirrors the covenant between Christ and his bride, the church. So it's a beautiful picture that unfortunately gets distorted a lot in our society and everything. People see it in different ways for different reasons. I mean, it could be how you were brought up, or you've just not been around a healthy marriage. It's really sad how much it's fallen from what it should be. But when two people come together and Christ is at the center of their marriage, it's a beautiful thing. It's this beautiful covenant relationship. But
yeah, I could speak to the times in my marriage when Christ has not been the center of our relationship, and when we strive for him to be in the center of our relationship. And like I keep saying, it's never perfect. Like 17 years, some people might laugh and be like, what are you doing a podcast at 17 years? Like, what are you going to bring? And they're probably right. Like, I don't have that much, but I feel like in 17 years, Ken and I have done it right, and we have done it wrong, and we still do it right and wrong. And when we try to do it right, it just seems to work out better.
Yeah.
You know, like, especially when you're in those rough patches, when you really step away and just try to respond in a biblical manner, even when it's hard, it does ultimately like go the way I think it's supposed to go. So yeah. So we were talking about, you know, when you talk about marriage, of course, Ephesians 5 comes up. So would you want to read Ephesians 5? I think you said what, like 22.
It's Ephesians 5:22 through 33, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so it says, wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband.
Yep, that just about says it. So I guess we can wrap up this podcast.
All right, we're done.
No, there's a lot in there, a lot of good stuff, and a lot of stuff that feels pretty impossible, right? So I guess some of the things that I kind of highlight is, what does it say for the man? Husbands are the head. Like, these are the things that sometimes irk other people when they hear, like, oh, the husband is the head of the wife, right? As Christ is the head of the church. So what does that mean? Like, he's your boss? Like, no, I don't see it like as a boss.
Yeah. So. A lot of feminists will have a problem with this because they see it that way, as, oh, your husband is in charge of you, like he dictates what you do, and that's not it at all.
No, that's not it. And right underneath that, right, a couple verses underneath that, it's husbands, love your wives as Christ loves the church. So I find it freeing that he is my head, you know, that I can submit to him, and that I'm sure it's easier for that to happen when your husband loves the Lord and is following the Lord. But But it is freeing. It takes some of the weight of the world off of your shoulders to know that you have a husband that can make decisions for you and your family.
Yeah.
And you can trust in him to do that. And it's also easier to accept that when he's loving you, which he won't do perfectly all the time. We all know that. But if he's loving you the way Christ loves the church, where's the problem in that?
And one thing I wanted to touch on that you said was if your husband is believing, also, even if he's not, we're still called to be respectful and submit to your husband even then, unless he's asking you to go against Christ. Just one verse that stood out to me when I was studying for this was 1 Peter 3:1, and it says, likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, that they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives when they see your respectful and pure conduct. So just a word to women whose husbands maybe don't know the Lord or aren't following close. You can still submit to your husband in a godly way. And it could be a witness to him. It could be what really opens him up to the gospel. I mean, God can use that.
Sure. Yeah. When they see a difference in a believing wife, for sure, that's the Christian life outside of marriage too, right? You're supposed to live the gospel and be different. People can notice that in you, and why? What's the difference there? So absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So then,
yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, back to Ephesians. One thing I noticed was what verse was it? Let me see. In verse 31, it says, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. That was taking it all the way back to Genesis 2, verse 18, when it says, God's not good for man to be alone. I'll make a helper suitable for him. So he formed Eve out of Adam's rib. And then he says the same thing. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So we see that God is really the one who instituted marriage. It's his idea. It's his covenant relationship that he formed. And so we need to take it seriously. It's not just this, I promise I'll be with you forever, I guess. And maybe if something, if something comes along that we don't like, we can always just, go our separate. No, it's a covenant relationship that you make with another person and with God.
Right. Which is something really important to keep in mind, because I know we're talking to married people, but we're also talking to singles out there who aren't married, but jumping around a little bit. If I could go back, I would take that knowledge that I have now of what you just said and prepare for it. Like, it is not, I want a big wedding or I want to live with my boyfriend. It's going to be a lot more than that. And it has to be a lot more seriously thought through. And I don't think, Ken and I went through the marriage counseling that you do before you get married, and we did all that, but I don't think either of us really were, really put Christ in the center of even our engagement, like to prepare ourselves, to give us a good foundation of how marriage should be when we got started. So like how serious it was, like you're saying, like we always said, no divorce. We always said that, and we've always stuck to that. But there's a lot more to it. Like if I knew what it meant to submit and how I was supposed to submit and what that means, exactly what that means, like there would have been a lot more talking and preparing, I think, before we dove into marriage.
So. Definitely agree. So on that note, let's talk about what is submission. What does it look like? What is it not? So first of all, what does it not mean? We're not saying that if your husband is abusive or he just runs over you, that you need to put up with that. That's not what we're saying.
No doormat marriage.
No, you do not have to put up with that. or it's not agreeing with everything your husband says 100% of the time, because that's not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen.
And if your husband is doing something and he needs some loving correction, because our husbands are not perfect either, we need to be able to go to him and say, hey, look, I think we need to work on this or whatever. And when he comes to you with that stuff, same thing. Need to be humble about it, accept that. Not easy to do, but
not easy to do. And that's one of the big things that I had to learn. I think both of us had to learn early on in our marriages, exactly how to submit. Like you say, if he's physically or emotionally abusive, you don't have to put up with that. Definitely the physical stuff,
yeah.
But as far as just like arguing or not wanting to be a doormat, no, you don't have to put up with that. But how you approach fixing this is a big one, because for me, still now, but maybe not so much. We'll see if Ken ever has anything to say about that. But early on, it was an immediate prideful reaction. If he said something that hurt me or was insensitive or whatever, right or wrong, I would instantly react like, in a very unsubmissive way, where I don't have to go and hide and cry by myself and just accept it. But I was not submitting in a way that I was just kind of beating him over the head or like, biting back. So it's like, I had to learn how to talk to him about how he hurt me or how he offended me, but still doing it in a respectful manner, which is super hard for me. Still is.
Yeah, it definitely. Same here. And it's not like you don't get a say in what happens. You can talk about it, but ultimately you need to trust your husband's leadership in that area and submit to that, even if it's not what you agreed with, which is not always easy. But you should by no means ever be afraid of your husband or, anything like that. That's not a healthy submission. That's not what submission should look like.
Well, and the whole covenant relationship, and just the wording, two become one flesh, and maybe this is a little bit out there, but when you're doing marriage and you're covenanted to each other, like, you should want to do that. Like, Ken talks to me about everything almost to a fault. I'll finally be like, dude, you choose, like, this is your job. Like, I don't have to do that. It says right there in the Bible. So like, we've talked about it. Now you get to, make that final decision. And that's why I'm saying it's freeing to me to have that ability to say, I don't know, here's my thoughts, but ultimately you decide, and that's good. And like I said, it is good for a husband to come to his wife and talk about, like, hey, what should we do here? Like, because teamwork, it is a marriage.
I wish that would work on when you're trying to figure out where to eat and you're just like, I don't know, you pick, but then that doesn't work.
Oh, it does for me. Okay. Maybe 9 years, 17 years. I'll tell him when we go on our getaways, the only thing, like, I don't want to cook or clean or decide where we eat. Like, if I could have that perfect getaway, you don't ask me any questions. Just where we go. So I don't care anymore. So it works for me now.
Yeah. So we kind of talked about what does submission mean, but let's talk about a little more what is some ways that you can submit to your husband biblically. Just I think
ways to submit to your husband biblically. Well, in decisions, like we just talked about, as long as they don't go against something that is biblical.
And I think one of the things is, back to Genesis, we're supposed to be our husband's helpmates. So just being that for him, being there to help him, encouraging him as he leads your family, not always saying, well, I think you made the wrong decision. Well, I think you did something really like encouraging him in his role as leader of the family and following that leadership. Like I said earlier, unless it goes against Christ, but hopefully it doesn't.
And another kind of circling back to what I had said earlier on how you approach it. if you do, like for me, a big one was I felt like I instantly sometimes had to say, oh, I don't, even if I didn't agree or it was right or wrong, I'm like, yeah, I don't know. But sometimes it's like you have to choose when you kind of say, here's my thoughts on it. And it might not be right when you're discussing it. Maybe you have to, especially if you have kids. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. It's like, for me, it's like if the kids are around, sometimes like I have to just wait, and then can I see you for a second over here? Because
Sidebar.
a lot of times sidebar, because a lot of times, even if it was a very like, hey, let's go here, or something, it's like, I think I was making him feel on multiple occasions where it's like, you always go like where to go to dinner. Like, can I not even do that? You're always showing the kids like mom just makes a new choice. Mom makes a new choice, where he's like, and that's just a very broad, like very surface level issue. But sometimes it's like choosing when to voice your opinion is submitting to him also. So especially as kids are watching or church members or anywhere, a waiter, like you just always keep him in your, I always want to make him feel esteemed no matter where we are. So it's kind of hard sometimes.
And that's very important, especially in front of your kids too, because you want to be modeling that biblical marriage to them. Because I mean, like we talked about earlier in the beginning, a lot of that plays into people's view of marriage is how they saw marriage growing up. Like my grandfather always used to say, well, it's just a piece of paper. But he finally towards the end was kind of getting more of a biblical view of that, like, oh, it really is important. So it just, we need to be careful of how we interact with other people and our marriage and everything, because we need to be always striving to show a biblical marriage to our kids especially, but also to everyone around us.
Yeah, I think there's like a, what would you say, fine line? Not a fine line. It's just sometimes it's hard to be real and then still display, because, and it depends on your audience, I guess, because like I have my best friend who I can be real with and tell her the nitty gritty of what we're going through. But she knows Ken and she knows that he loves the Lord. And so she can listen to the nitty gritty and help me through that. And I still feel like I am submitting to my husband and I'm not tearing him down. Where like sometimes, especially with social media, all you see is how perfect everything is. And oh, look at, she is the perfect wife and she never has anything bad to say about her husband. So it's like, you have to have your real people, but you have to also understand that it's not always
it's really important to have godly women in your life that you can go to with that stuff too, because you can't just keep it bottled up, and you need somewhere to
and you can't always explode in front of your kids or in front of at a potluck at church or something, so that is, and choosing the right piece, because I have godly people in my life that I, family members. Sometimes I feel like maybe I've damaged a relationship between Ken and my mom sometimes, just because, I vent to my mom sometimes. Now they're fine, but sometimes I feel like I need to be careful with who I vent to, even if they do know. Well, I know Ken and I know Cathy and I love them both, but there's some people that, your mom's always going to be your cheerleader. So you have to have those people that can be a little not biased. So
I agree with that. I did I was kind of reading some articles on godly marriage and what other people were saying about it. I found a really cool article that was on Ligonier, which I love Ligonier. So but it was written by a man named William Bogestein, I think is how you say his name. But he had a really good quote that said, admittedly, God's command of submission is difficult, partly because of painful examples of male leadership, and female acquiescence. Some wives feel that submission is degrading, unfair, and unhealthy. In reality, biblical submission, namely a willing and appropriate response to proper authority, is humbling and not demoralizing. Where God has placed us under proper authority, our submission can glorify God and foster true joy. In a well-yoked marriage, the husband also senses his duty to love God, nourish, and faithfully respect his wife. So I thought that was
it does. That kind of goes into what I was, one of my thoughts when I was preparing for this whole thing is like, why is it easier to follow Jesus and to love Jesus than to, like, why is it so hard for us to submit? Why is it so hard for us to swallow our pride or whatever? And I mean, I think that's kind of obvious that even though marriage mirrors Christ in the church, I mean, it's so broken, right? Like marriage is so broken because it's a covenant between two broken people, where when you're talking about your relationship with Christ in the church, you're not talking about two broken people. You're talking about Christ who loves us perfectly and has never sinned against us. So not that it's easy. I was telling Ken, like, I don't like saying it's easy to follow Jesus all the time, or submit to what he, his plan for your life. It's not easy, but you're getting what I'm saying is, he doesn't attack us. He doesn't hurt us. He doesn't, fail us in any way. So why is it hard for us as women, or why does it feel degrading to submit to our husband sometimes? Because he fails us. My husband fails me and he hurts me. And I'm, we started dating when we were 17. So I've been putting up these little walls, for however many years, because he's failed me so many times. And yes, I failed him just as much. I'm sure everybody realizes that I am no peach of a wife all the time, but I think that's why it's degrading, is because we are broken, prideful people and we deserve better, right? Like, how dare you, right? So that's why marriage is so hard sometimes.
Yeah. I'm here to tell you all that the absolute perfect husband does not exist anywhere, ever. No. If you're looking for him, stop. You will never find him.
You will never find him. Yep. And I think that's super hard this day with social media everywhere, because I even fall into that trap. I really do. Not that I've talked myself into believing like, oh, that person's husband is perfect, but you do see, oh, look at the vacations. They always look so beautiful together. They're always smiling. They probably never have the fights we do, and I'm like, I tell myself that's just stupid, Kath. Like, that's not true. But that's all you see, because nobody posts their fights. Nobody posts the garbage.
He got her pretty flowers or pretty card.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, maybe they had a fight. You don't know.
Yeah. He got her pretty flowers after a massive blow up fight. Yeah. Or it's Mother's Day and, everybody else is getting so much more. He must love her so much more. They're so romantic,
Yeah.
It's social media is super hard in so many ways now that you have everybody's lives shoved in your face.
That and all of the romantic movies and TV shows on TV gives you a totally like fake version of the perfect man.
Oh yes. Believe me, I have a 13-year-old daughter, and we're watching this cowboy show right now with cowboys and horses, and that it's just they're on oh, he saved her from the coyote and stuff like that, and she's just like, oh, Mom, and I'm just like, it is not like that. I'm like, don't get this into your head.
But on another note, I literally saw a video of a man saving his wife from a bobcat earlier. So
did he fling it across the yard?
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that too. See, and they have their knight in shining armor moments.
I was like, Andrew, would you fling a bobcat for me?
It's like before or after I ran away. Like, no, yeah. So no flinging bobcats. Ken would come out and shoot it. He wouldn't fling it.
I was like, he'd start with the gun. He would.
Yeah. Get down. So yeah, I mean, do you see any like other than the fact that we're fallen, why it would be harder in marriage than it is in like your relationship with God? Some aspects of it.
Yeah, I think the main reason would be that we're fallen and we come with unrealistic expectations. And then I think another thing would be is we expect the other person to be the one that's great.
Mhm.
And we don't really look at ourselves and be like, okay, how can I be a better wife? Or
Mhm.
what could I be doing to help support
Mhm.
my husband? Or we don't really think about that. We're always like, well, he should be doing this and he should be doing that. We don't look at ourselves and say, well, I should be doing this and I need to be working on this.
Right.
And I think one of the best things we can do for not only ourselves but our husband is to love God with all of our heart, mind, and soul. Like, we need to be pursuing that relationship with Christ, and everything else will follow. I think
Right.
that's one of the most important things that we can do to have a godly marriage.
Yeah. If we keep kind of bouncing back to what would we have done differently beforehand, right?
Yeah.
That's what I would do when I was single. So all you single ladies, there's Andrew's song that he wanted us to get it. Oh, you sing? Yeah, okay. So something you could do, which I wish I would have done for myself and for my husband, is being more in, like, staying in the word, like we talked about. Like, it is so important to be just like infused with the word, because if that's what you're filling your heart and mind with, that's what's going to come out. That's what you're going to want to be. That's what you're going to aspire to do and be, as a godly wife. And you will only know what that looks like by being in the word.
Yeah.
So,
and I can tell when I haven't been, because I get angry easier and I get irritated a lot more, and I'm like, what's the problem here? And I'm like, oh yeah, I need to go back and be in the word because I haven't today. It does
yes.
make such a difference.
Yeah.
And you don't know until you haven't done it for a while, and you're like, oh man.
It's a personal struggle of mine even today. I mean, just with finding the time or having the time and choosing to spend it that way instead of taking a nap or
Yeah.
calling my mom or, something like that. It's like, it's choosing. So, what definitely was not a priority when I was single. And I don't think it was really Ken's priority either. And
Yeah.
I think if we, as single people going back, would have spent more time that and desired that for ourselves and for our husbands, then the person you're looking for would all share those same convictions, and it's going to lay this foundation that I just absolutely did not have at the beginning. I had no foundation like that at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, start developing those, what's the word I'm looking for? Those
I know what you're talking about.
I can't speak
Habits.
English today. Yes.
Habits.
Develop those habits now. And so whenever you do get into a marriage relationship, you already have that, and it's a habit, and you do it. That just makes it so much easier than trying to figure out everything in this new relationship, because it's so different, and you have to figure things out, and you don't want to have to figure that out on top of it as well. If you're already in the habit of it, then you're already oh.
Right. And that's exactly what happened to me. It's like, I feel like I got into marriage, and it was like, oh, this isn't what I was expecting. What am I supposed to do? And then you start flipping through the Bible trying to find, like, how do I fix this and stuff like that. And it's like, no, man, you got so much you have to learn. It's not just like, oh, here's the verse, now it's fixed. Like, and believe me, that's not the verse you want to come across when you're thinking, how should I fix my marriage? Wives, submit to your husband. Like, that just threw me for a loop, right? Like, how am I supposed to do that? I'm like, you have to like totally learn about, like, we were talking about the relationship, the covenant relationship, and how does that work? Why does that work? And it's a lot. So yes, developing that habit would have been a game changer for me. And even now, like I say, I struggle with keeping on that. Like you said, it does make a difference. It grounds me a little bit, it makes me quicker. What is it? Slow to speak, quick to listen,
And it does get harder, especially after you have kids too, because you're like, oh, I'll wake up early and do it. Well, it seems like every time I wake up, if I wake up earlier, then so does Elijah. It's like you have to figure out what time. So I have to do mine at night, or else it doesn't get done.
I'm not a morning person, so that would never happen either. And now where I used to have time in the evening because all my kids would go to bed. Well, I have older kids now. So half the time I go to bed before they do, so it is choices. It's like, man, I could leave them right now and go to my room and do a quiet time by myself. But so sometimes they want me to stay, it's like, do I spend time with my kids or do I spend time with my Lord? And it's hard. It's hard for me. It is a personal, so there's a prayer request for me. And on that note, also praying for your husband, praying for my husband. Again, going back to when I was single, man, even before I met Ken, if I had been praying for God to choose my husband or to, be involved, what I want, preparing myself, like prepare me not to have those expectations in marriage that, I think I have. Lord, protect me from setting a bar too high, or bring me a godly husband, things like that. If I even had that type of mentality when I was 15 or 16 years old, because my mom called me boy crazy, that was my aspiration. I wanted to get married and have kids. So at a young age, I was, love struck and wedding and stuff. So if I had like reprioritized, instead of just finding a cute guy, it was the right guy. And Ken, you're the right guy. But you know what I mean? I think our lives would have been a lot different, but I think prayer is a very mighty tool that young girls and single people can use to really pave the way for a better start in marriage.
And one thing that I struggled with when I was single was wanting to be loved. And so I needed to find that. You should be finding that in Christ. That should be the first and foremost place that you go. It shouldn't be this, I'm lonely and I want somebody to love me. So the first guy that comes across that says, oh, I like you, then it's like, okay, then let's date. It's more than that. Like if you fall so in love with Christ, he will bring you, if it's his will, he will bring you the right guy at the right time.
That's right.
It's hard to wait.
I think it is hard to wait, but I think if you're like you're saying, if you're so in love with Christ, it will be easier to wait because you're not so focused on,
and you're not going to settle.
I was too. No, right. Because you don't need to. You're not in this rush to feel belonging to someone, to be part of that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely true.
And if it's the case that God has willed you to be single your whole life, I think that he will let you be okay with that. It might be hard. I haven't experienced that, so I don't know, but I think that he will give you the strength to do that, and that you can find other ways to love. Go work on mission, go do something.
I think that's and I don't know the scripture, maybe you do, where it says, didn't Andrew talk about it on Sunday, where if you are single, you can give your whole body to Christ, if you don't have to separate, and you can just completely give yourself over. So that's, and like you said, I haven't had that either. So I say, that might be hard at points, but I think it'd be a big blessing also. I don't know how many times I'm like, oh, I want to go to that Bible study and I want to do this, but I can't because I have a newborn, or I have, this or that, just because I have a busy life sometimes and I can't do some of the stuff that I would like to do. So there is that aspect of that. I think the last thing I had on prayer, as far as for a husband, I just want to throw this out as my last point on prayer, is not only can you just pray in general for your future husband or your husband now, but there are specific ways to pray for your husbands. My husband, I had this book, Power of a Praying Wife, and it has a whole bunch of different specific ways to pray for your husband. like you can pray for his marriage. And I think we touched on that briefly as far as coming to a marriage with expectations. You can pray for that for your husband, specifically for his marriage. Don't let past relationships come into our, don't let infidelity like seep into our minds, or divorce come and start working its way like into your mind. Like, should this be, could we do this? Or so specifically praying for specific areas in your husband's life. It did really make a difference early on in my marriage, when I just didn't know what to do. It was kind of like a good guide for me to pray specifically for his patience, for his attitude, for his job, for his fatherhood, like all these different specific areas. And that's fine to pray for your husband before you even have a husband, or now, like specific areas was a game changer for me.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. And kind of like what we talked about earlier too, just a way to love your husband well is when you see something in him that needs to be confronted, do it humbly and lovingly. Don't just be like, well, you need to, but make sure that you go to him with it instead of just sitting there like stewing in it, because then it'll make you bitter and just angry. And just be willing to talk about that. And if he does come to you with something like that, try to be humble about it and accept that, and look at yourself and say, is what he's saying have any merit? Do I see that? Do I need to work on that? So
also hard to do, but I've had many times where I've done the you need to know type thing, and I don't even mean it that way, but that's a hard one for me, is to let him know something in a very gentle manner.
Yes. Everything in me wants to be like, excuse me, but
or let's look at you for a second. Like, you're telling me
we're not talking about me.
Let's keep it on you for a second. All right. Well, anything else to add to any of this very, very brief overview of a very deep, what was it Paul calls it, the deepest mystery of marriage?
I think we pretty much touched on the surface of it.
All right, well, then I will conclude this very first podcast. It was a joy talking to you about this, and I look forward to many, many other podcasts on many other subjects. I'm sure we have lots to talk about. All right, see you next time.
All right, bye.